Now, there are the philosophical virtues which are talked about when we talk about temperance and courage and wisdom and justice. And the Sufis will talk about this. Ghazali talks about them and says this is a basis, right? But the place where Plato and Aristotle end, this is where the Sufis begin, because outside of these philosophical virtues, there are the mystical virtues, right? So again, one must attain temperance and courage and wisdom and justice. And one must attain the balance between, because a virtue in the philosophic sense is the balance between extremes, right? So when we talk about courage, it is the midpoint between the deficiency, which is cowardice, but also the excess, which is recklessness or being foolhardy, right? So it's like this, right? It's like this. Justice, again, is to balance and keep in harmony, right? The lack of justice is injustice, but too much justice in a certain sense is servility, right? You're like too harsh, right? There has to be a balance, a wasatiyah, which is the intermediateness. Now, it's very interesting that Ghazali mentions that there are ends and means virtues that one must acquire on the path. So what are some examples? The means are things which will lead you to the goals of the path. The ends are what the goals of the path are. So for instance, repentance, patience, asceticism, self-examination, poverty, all of these qualities are means. The goal isn't asceticism. Right? The goal isn't to be an ascetic, but asceticism will help you transform so that you can attain the things that lie after them. And what are those? These are the ends. They are sought for their own sake and not for serving as a means to something else. And he gives the examples of love, yearning, satisfaction, unity, and trust, and gratitude. And he distinguishes by saying every quality that is an end will remain in the soul in the next life. Right? So there's no ascetics in the garden, but there is love. Right? There's no patience in the garden, but there is unity and gratitude. This is the point, if we think about that. So this is really important for us to think about, because often the way religion and even spirituality is taught is in a very disciplinarian way. Right? You can't do this, you can't eat that, you can't look at this, you can't say this, right? There's a bunch of rules. But people aren't told what's the goal. What is the purpose of these rules, right? The rules or the practices we take on are part of this method. Now, so the mystical virtues that are mentioned by Imam Ghazali in the revival of the disciplines of the way are tawbah, repentance, sabr, which is patience, shukr, which is gratitude, raja, which is hope, khawf, which is reverence or fear, faqr, which is poverty, zuhd, asceticism, tawheed, divine unity, tawakkul, trust, mahabba, love, shawq, which is yearning, uns, which is intimacy, rida, which is satisfaction, niyyah, which is resolve, ikhlas, which is sincerity, sidq, which is truthfulness, muraqabah, which is vigilance, muhasabah, self-examination, and tafakkur, which you could translate as meditation or contemplation. All of these are qualities which will transform us and illuminate us, and they have opposites. The important thing to know is that if we want to have sabr, patience, how do we acquire it? It is by having patience. Right? So Ghazali mentions that there are three parts of a virtue. There is the knowledge of it, understanding what it is and how to implement it. Then there is the disposition, and then there is the action, if you think about this, right? So one could think of, for instance, gratitude is a beautiful example, We have to know what gratitude is, what it means to truly be grateful to the divine reality, what it means to use the gifts we've been given for the ways that they're intended by the divine reality as a form of gratitude, etc., and the levels of gratitude. Then we have to observe in ourselves when we're ungrateful, right? When we feel entitled and when we feel, lacking in using our gifts for what they're intended to, because that's a type of ingratitude. And every time we feel that, or we incline towards that, or we do an act of ingratitude, we have to counter it with gratitude. That will then at first be hard and it's forced, but it becomes ultimately our disposition. And then it results in action that flows naturally. And then people that are grateful, it's just like that. We can think about generosity as another example. We have to know what generosity is. We have to really contemplate generosity in relation to the prophetic teachings. Everyone knows what generosity is in the basic level, but perhaps there are deeper levels of generosity that we can understand.